Uh, we'll start in 1 or 2 minutes. Okay. Mm, Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Uh, Welcome to another session of UPSC Current Affairs. Today, again, we shall be covering the current affairs from various sources. 8th of August 2024. At the outset, I request you to join the Telegram group also. You'll get the PDF not only of this lecture, but also from PIB, and there are other valuable materials which are being shared on the Telegram channel, so you may join them. So starting today, the first topic that we have is dealing with the polity. The news is that there was an honorable judge in the High Court which has initiated some contempt proceedings, but the Supreme Court has put a stay on that contempt proceedings. The judge of the High Court, who had initially initiated the contempt proceedings, registered his dissent on the ruling of the Supreme Court. And finally, the Supreme Court has expunged those remarks. Supreme Court, now, what is important for us over here is to understand what is the contempt proceedings. मेंस में क्वेश्चन आने का इसमें थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट है. However, in prelims, it may very well be asked. So there are three articles which relates to the contempt proceedings. The articles which are related to the High Court, you can see on the view file. Article 129 explicitly provides the powers to punish for contempt to the Supreme Court. Similarly, Article 142 also empowers the Supreme Court to punish against any contempt of itself. Now, Article 142 has been asked in UPSC prelims earlier, and it's a very important article, because under this, Supreme Court can undertake any case and pass any judgment in the interest of the justice. Anyways, our topic for today is contempt. So these two articles are important. The Constitution itself grants the power to punish for contempt to the Supreme Court as well as to the High Court. Article 215, it says that even the High Court will also have the powers to punish for its contempt. Further, we can see, you refer to the details. Now, the word contempt is contempt of the court, or contempt of itself is contempt word as such is mentioned in the Constitution. However, it is not defined in the Constitution. Now, where is it defined? That is defined in Contempt of Courts Act 1971.3, if you see. Contempt of Courts Act 1971. Now, these simple facts are important for MCQ type questions. What are the types of contempt? There are two: civil contempt and criminal contempt. They are given in Lakshmikant also. So you can revise. Otherwise, civil contempt is willful disobedience of any order of the Supreme Court, and criminal contempt is once you write something, once you public, once you publish something. Now, publishing something has to have a background that it either scandalizes the court or it creates an interference or hindrance in the proceedings of the court. Then only it will be treated as contempt. What are the punishments? Okay, however, अगर कोई reporting कर रहा है and that is a true reporting, that is acceptable, and fair and reasonable criticism is also acceptable. Now, अगर हम कंटेम्प्ट पावर्स की ही क्रिटिसिज्म करते हैं तो इसमें सिर्फ इतना लिखा है कि फेयर एंड रीजनेबल क्रिटिसिज्म. Now, once you write fair and reasonable criticism, who will decide what is fair and what is reasonable? So that gives a lot of leeway to the courts to decide as to what constitutes its contempt. And that and in such way it is very discretionary or arbitrary kind of power that is given to the courts. Nonetheless, it is important that such powers are provided so that the judiciary maintains the dignity of itself. However, as far as criticism, if we have to write, the criticism of this is that there is no, yeah, that there is no absolute uh, demarcation as to what constitutes the line between fair and unfair or reasonable or unreasonable. 6 years or fine up to rupees 2000 or both. Now, one more thing is, once you have seen the constitutional articles, here if you see, now in both the articles, it is written contempt of itself. The Supreme Court has the power to punish for contempt of itself, both Article 129 and 142. But it nowhere mentions that can it punish for the contempt of High Court also. The Supreme Court has ruled that yes, it can punish. Point number 8 में देखिए, second sub point, that Supreme Court can punish for not only its own contempt, but if there is a contempt against any high court, that also is punishable by the Supreme Court. Similarly, Constitution does not grant any contempt powers to the subordinate courts. That power also resides with the high courts. And the last point is that this is in news just few days back, that Armed Forces Tribunals has also been given contempt powers. So in case an AFT, that is Armed Forces Tribunal, passes a judgment and that the judgment is not complied with, earlier they could not do anything. The AFTs could not do anything. They could just pass the judgment and then the matter would reach for its conclusion in the High Court. But now, just last week, the Supreme Court has ruled that the AFT does have the contempt powers. And now, if the AFT gives any judgment and if it is not complied with, the contempt proceedings can be initiated against the erring individual. Now, this part, the last point which I have said is important once you, to write once you in case you are analyzing the judicial system of India, that even tribunals are now being empowered with the contempt powers. It is not related to the Central Administrative Tribunal or any other tribunal. This judgment was particularly related to Armed Forces Tribunal. That also should be kept in mind. Okay. Next, there is a small topic, small news rather. Okay. There is one new tiger reserve coming up in Chhattisgarh. The name is uh, okay. I have not written the name, and the precise purpose is that you go through it and write down the name in your own notes. Otherwise, it is Guru Ghasidas Timor Pingla Wildlife Sanctuary being converted into tiger reserve. So you can just write down as of now for today we are discussing just the name. Whenever it is declared, then we'll cover this topic as to how it is declared and what are the changes brought to the law. Can central government also declare it, which incidentally it can now. Anyways, just for the name, Guru Ghasidas Timor Pingla Wildlife Sanctuary now being converted into tiger reserve also, right? Okay, this is also a very simple news. I mean, we are not discussing the news, but this is just a fodder point for you to write how the governance is taking place in India. There might be a question as to the working of parliament. The working of parliament, as we know, is being criticized that it is not discussing the matters which it should. Uh, the MP, Honorable Member Parliament, Mr. Manish Tiwari mentions that there has been no foreign policy discussion in the Parliament. Similarly, for Dhaka, as we know, the recent news of the flight of Mrs. Sheikh Hasina from Dhaka, so that has not been adequately discussed. So, likewise, you can refer the rather than writing simply that issues are not being discussed, you can write specific points which shall fetch you more marks. Moving ahead, this is what topic which we will discuss in detail. That is BIMSTEC. As the news says that members need to find new pathways to sign for FTA, free trade agreement. BIMSTEC has been in existence since 1997. It's a regional grouping, but till now, the the free trade agreement has not been signed and it has been delayed continuously. So we will see just as to what is BIMSTEC and what are the challenges that it faces. Now on the view file, you can see uh, basics about the BIMSTEC. This is taken from the website of the BIMSTEC itself. So any question, mostly the questions are framed for organizations, international organizations per se, and even organizations of the Indian government also. Mostly the questions are framed from their own website. So you should make it a point that on any website which you visit, आप जो भी website visit करते हो उसका about us page जरूर देखो, so that you may have a basic idea as to what is that organization and what are important things it does. Coming on to BIMSTEC, the full form stands as Bengal Initiative, rather Bay of Bengal Initiative. Sorry, it has to be highlighted completely. Bay of Bengal Initiative for multi-sectoral, technical, and economic cooperation. Now it mentions economic cooperation, but it has failed to sign the free trade agreement as yet. It was established on 6 June 1997 through Bangkok Declaration. Initially, it did not have the three countries which I have marked, which I have highlighted and kept in bold: Myanmar, Bhutan, and Nepal. Again, you got to remember these countries from prelims point of view, that Myanmar joined in 97, Bhutan and Nepal in 2004, right? Which all countries joined late, that you got to remember from prelims perspective. Aim, as I said, it is the economic cooperation, of course, as technical cooperation also. We'll see as to there are certain more aspects to it. And finally, after Bhutan and Nepal joined in 2004, it was renamed as BIMSTEC. Earlier, it was BISTEC. Okay. So, its secretariat is in Dhaka. सार्क जो है, सार्क की सेक्रेटेरिएट है काठमांडू में, बिम्स्टेक की सेक्रेटेरिएट है ढाका में. Okay. Then it is a driven grouping. Now, initially there were 6 sectors. In 2008, they took it up to now. As of now, there are 14 sectors on which uh, these countries cooperate. Then in the last line, you can see there is last word as lead country. Now, lead country, this can again be simply asked in a prelims as to lead country's concept is related to which of the organization. So now you know it is BIMSTEC. Now, what is lead country? There are certain, okay, next, yes. There are certain sectors and subsectors. There are certain sectors and subsectors which are given to the respective country for them to steer. India is being given security as well as counterterrorism, transnational crime, disaster management, and energy. We all know India supplies energy to, India takes up hydropower projects in Nepal and supplies. India can do further in supplying the energy to other members also. So this again forms a very important part of prelims as to what all are the responsibilities of India as a lead country, as a member of BIMSTEC: security, counterterrorism, transnational crime, disaster management, and energy. And how BIMSTEC works, there are national focal points. जो भी हमारी इन members की, all the 7 members, they have a national focal point in their own external affairs ministry. जो भी उनकी foreign affairs की ministry है, उसमें national focal points बने होते हैं, जो कि आगे आपस में सारी countries जिनके थ्रू communicate करती हैं और coordinate करती है. Then it has a five-tiered organization, as I mentioned. Summit. Whenever you see summit means the top boss is meeting. Here, the summit, if it is a summit of the countries, the top men of the country, the heads of the state will meet. For us, it would be the prime minister, and for others it could be president or the prime minister, as the case may be. Summit, after summit, it is ministerial. Ministerial comprises of the Minister of External Affairs. Then sectoral, जैसे मैंने अभी बोला कि एनर्जी के रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इंडिया की है, तो सेक्टोरल मिनिस्टर मीन्स कि अगर एनर्जी के लिए कोई मीटिंग हो रही है तो द एनर्जी मिनिस्टर ऑफ द पावर मिनिस्टर ऑफ द कंट्री विल गो and attend the meeting. Then senior officials, secretary level officers, they go and attend their meeting. Permanent working group, permanent working committee, again comprising of the senior officials. Then principles, again very simple. There is nothing. I don't see it being asked either in pre or in mains. But then going through them once is fruitful, just in case. So sovereign equality, territorial integrity, political independence, non-interference in internal affairs, non-aggression, peaceful coexistence, mutual respect, and mutual benefit. These are the principles on which the BIMSTEC works. Then the cooperation, जो BIMSTEC की आपस में cooperation है, वो substitute नहीं है, but complementary है bilateral relations का. Anyways, not that important. We shall move further. Okay, this is important that the chairmanship of BIMSTEC, it rotates according to the alphabetical order. जैसे जैसे नाम है वैसे वैसे chairmanship rotate होती जाएगी. Okay. And if you happen to see, there is no regular regularity in the terms also. Like you can see for 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, then for from 9 to 14, it was Myanmar. 15 to 18, 3 years it was Nepal. 18 to 22, again Sri Lanka. Now, from here itself, you can judge that initially it started with a lot of enthusiasm. Everything was going fine. But then here you can see that if the chairmanship itself is not changing, that means things have become a little stagnant. The last meeting itself was in 2018, and thereafter it happened in 2022. Not even for 4 years, nothing happened, not even virtually. So this is what is the stagnation. Nonetheless, few things. Who was the first chairman? Bangladesh was the first chairman. Who is the current chairman? Thailand. How many times has India been the chair? That is twice. Okay. Next. Okay, this is important from mains perspective, right? Now, it tells it there are certain points which tells you that uh, how how our region is, how our region, that is South Asia and Southeast Asia, how that functions. Now, if you compare ourselves with Europe, Europe is very well integrated. They have European Union, their borders are almost free. Even a person going from outside to the European countries have Schengen visa and can visit many countries on a single visa. So they are very well connected. So there is a sense of regional unity there. However, once we come to the South Asia and East Asia, we do not find that regional unity over here. Now, generally, if you see, I've written that countries, point number second, if you see that countries in our this thing, they engage more bilaterally rather than multilaterally. उसका रीजन ये है कि हमारे पास इंस्टीट्यूट्स ही ऐसे नहीं है जैसे यूरोपियन यूनियन डेवलप हुआ टाइम से after the Second World War. They were much more forthcoming in making that union stronger. However, we do not have such similar counterparts on our side, right? So, number one, we do not have such institutions, and number two, the political dynamics is more complex. We have uh, our issues are such that it doesn't allow us to get that institution mechanism made over here. जब बिम्स्टेक आया था तो इसका पोटेंशियल और प्रॉमिस, एज यू हैव सीन फ्रॉम, एज इट इज रिफ्लेक्टेड इन द चेयरमैनशिप इटसेल्फ, that it had potential, it had promise, but then thereafter things were going southwards. It has largely been dormant. Why it has been dormant? Now this is again important for mains, that there is no immediate threat. Yes, there are frictions, but there is nothing, no immediate friction which can galvanize the other countries. Then structural weaknesses, again, structural is more of institutional like. And then domestic political issues, they are considered more important. Of course, in democracy, they always are, right? So this is what is holding things back. The challenges and issues with BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC, as I said, it was signed in 97. 2004, it came into its full shape, that all the 7 countries had joined. But after 20 years, they could only manage to sign a charter. Now, charter is something based on which the organization works. Now, they took 20 years. That means the things have not been going as they should have gone. Second is level of commitment, ambiguity, right? On simple points, there is lack of political will. Of course, if the heads of the states would have wanted, if the countries would have wanted to get this thing through, they could have gotten it through. But compulsions are such that they they could not. Okay. Lack of resources, global, we are all countries of the global south here. We do not have that much finances which can uh, which can take this organization ahead. Okay. Then, as again, as a comparison to Europe, You can see how a single train can move from east to west and cover entire Europe. But here we do not, we have that capability, but it is marred by internal conflicts between the countries. Customs and clearances, again, they are a hindrance in the connectivity. Friction, we see India and Nepal boundary issues, India, Sri Lanka, many issues, um, let's say fishermen issues, Kacha Thivu issue, one recent issues, right? Bangladesh, Myanmar, again, refugee issues. And likewise, these two are again, I'll subsequently cover them also. But then the countries themselves, individually, if we see, bilaterally, if we see, then they have their frictions. So those frictions also come to the fore in such forums also. We have seen in Myanmar, there was a military coup, and again in Bangladesh also, at present, the army is in charge. So how this thing will pan out, because they are not they cannot be considered as democracies now. How far can we interact with them, and how far will that, even if we take certain steps, how far will that holds good once the democratic government, elected government, comes into power? Now, public opinion is very important in these cases. Next is China factor. Again, China, it does interfere. So, based on its own strength, it has it has always influenced the foreign policy of such countries. So, uh, see, you can see here that Bangladeshi scholars supporting admitting China as a partner in BIMSTEC. So imagine, uh, it is very least likely that India will be supporting this idea, right? Uncertainties over SARC, right? Few members like Nepal and Sri Lanka, they want SARC to function well rather than BIMSTEC. India, of course, has almost abandoned SARC and concentrating towards BIMSTEC. Uh, Apathy towards holding regular annual summits, right? So, as it is mentioned that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, ASEAN, G20, all had conducted their meetings. However, the BIMSTEC leaders, they did not. That's how these are the problems which BIMSTEC faces. What what could be the future? Now, there are three initiatives, and this region could be a showdown for the past for these three initiatives, that is Belt and Road Initiative, India's own Act East policy, and Asia Africa Growth Corridor. The activities of all these three initiatives will be concentrated in the BIMSTEC region. And once they are concentrated in this region, there is again bound to be asymmetries and frictions. Now, India, of course, has policy of neighborhood first and Act East. It wants to enhance the physical connectivity as well as trade. So BIMSTEC can form a major enabler for us to achieve the aims of our own foreign policy. Northeastern state of India, northeastern states of India, as we know, they are the gateway to South Asia and Southeast Asia, connected to Myanmar as well as Bangladesh. So their development also hinges upon BIMSTEC. If BIMSTEC succeeds, the northeastern part of India shall also become more prosperous. For the countries like Bhutan and Nepal, obviously, there, if the connectivity increases, there is more economic cooperation, they will have more opportunities. Right. That's all for BIMSTEC. I think this is sufficient for at least as of now. because there is no other development. FTA, BIMSTEC FTA is being discussed. If it comes, we'll discuss that, and then you can add on in your notes. However, as of now, this is something which can suffice for your preparation. Next, again, very important from prelims. These days, these questions are being asked. The Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. Okay. राष्ट्रीय विज्ञान पुरस्कार मतलब ये साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी के लिए दिया जा रहा है. इंडिविजुअल को भी दिया जा सकता है और एक टीम को भी दिया जा सकता है. इसमें 3 words they are mentioning: science, technology and innovation, right? Science, technology and innovation. Again, this term can be given in prelims. Not only Indian citizens, but अगर कोई person of Indian origin है और वो he is staying abroad, but then his contribution is such कि वो चाहे इंडिया हो चाहे मतलब सोसाइटी एज एट लार्ज को, if it is benefiting, then a person of Indian origin can also be given this award. There are 4 categories. First is Vigyan Ratna. Vigyan Ratna is the highest award for this. Vigyan Ratna is something you can, अगर comparison करना है तो इसको you can compare it with the Bharat Ratna, that it is the topmost thing. So it is given for lifetime achievement, Vigyan Ratna. Then Vigyan Shri, again it is for distinguished contribution. Then Vigyan Yuva Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar, again for young scientists. Then there is Vigyan team. Yeah. So the team has to be of 3 or more. 2 doesn't count as a team here. Right? So Vigyan team has to be 2 or more. Again, these words important: scientists, researcher, or innovators. They shall be given these awards. Now, how many awards can be given in a year? Vigyan Ratna maximum 3, Vigyan Shri maximum 25, Vigyan Yuva SSB 25, Vigyan Team 3. Right? Again, important, I would say from 3. कब दिए जाएंगे? ये दो चीजें इसमें याद रखनी है. 1, ये अनाउंस कब किए जाएंगे और इनकी सेरेमनी कब होंगी. अनाउंस होंगे ये नेशनल टेक्नोलॉजी डे पे. नेशनल टेक्नोलॉजी डे हर साल मनाया जाता है. वाजपेयी जी ने डिक्लेयर किया था. कमेमोरेट किसको करता है? इंडिया के 1998 पोखरण न्यूक्लियर ब्लास्ट्स को. देन इसकी सेरेमनी कब होगी? सेरेमनी विल बी ऑन नेशनल स्पेस डे. नेशनल स्पेस डे अभी इसी साल डिक्लेयर किया गया था. विच कमेमोरेट्स India's landing on moon and being the first one to reach its south pole. For 2024, the theme of National Space Day is touching lives while touching the moon, India's space saga. Again, अगर कोई recent exam हो रहा है तो then this can be important. Nonetheless, for UPSC, you got to remember that it is announced on National Technology Day. It is given on National Space Day. Technology Day is for Pokhran blast, and Space Day is for landing on moon. Okay. Now, these Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, they will commence from this year only. It doesn't, the benefits, it doesn't mention any, the website doesn't mention any cash awards here. It is only a Sanad, medallion and citation, right? Posthumously, yes, it can be given posthumous also. Eligibility, as I said, गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज, गवर्नमेंट के साइंटिस्ट जैसे DRDO हो गया, इसरो हो गया, CSIR हो गया, या और एनी अदर इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट वगैरह हो गया. तो their scientists are also eligible. Private organizations are also eligible. Then again, I am harping scientist, technologist, innovator. Indian origin abroad, they can be given. Okay, there are 13 domains. Explicitly, they have mentioned the first 12, but in case something else comes up, so it is not something with 13th others that has kept things open, though in any category it can be given. Nonetheless, if straightway question asked how many categories it can be given, 13 or 12, you got to think and then mark how is it written as in the questions. But अगर 13 domains लिखा है तो you can straight away mark 13. Specify 12 and 13th one is left unspecified. Okay. Again, okay. Now next there are very simple news which has come up. Now we all know that India has started with PLI, but then PLI the production linked in incentives. The scheme is not taking off because India is lacking the skilled manpower. Most of the machines are coming from China. India requires the technicians from China so that to initialize that production. So this is again an example of globalization, how globally connected we are, and how it is important for uh, manpower, or rather the human capital, to move around, to mobility of the human capital. It is important in globalized world for development of every country. Again, this I have given for you to remember a specific example. Yeah, a general example anybody can write, but then if you give PLI and Chinese worker, despite the two countries not having cordial relations for past some time, still it is imperative that the countries should cooperate for economic development, right? Okay, next is again critical minerals mission. ये अभी आया नहीं है, ये आ जाएगा most likely. What is written is that it will be coming by the end of this year. Then of course budget proposed it, but then only once it comes, then we will see it. For you, you can make a list of the critical minerals. मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ माइंस ने जुलाई में शायद रिलीज की थी एक लिस्ट विच दे हैव मेंशन 30 क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स. सो वो 30 क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स दैट शुड बी, मतलब दैट लिस्ट यू शुड गो थ्रू वंस. कौन कौन से हैं? I mean, a simple question could be as to they will list 5 of the minerals and then ask which of them is critical and which of them is not. Okay, this again we will be discussing in detail. This is our last topic for the day. So again, this is important from prelims perspective. We are seeing the market is fluctuating. Stock markets are seeing a downward trend. Why they are seeing downward trend is because of the selling spree by the foreign institutional investors. FIIs are pulling out their money from India, and that's why Indian stock market is going down. Now, you see the two terms in the news. One is DII, another one is FPI. The DII stands for domestic institutional investors. FPI stands for foreign portfolio investors. अब इसके नाम से क्लियर हो जाना चाहिए कि या तो हम हैं जैसे इंडिविजुअल है, दोज आर कॉल्ड रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स. अगर कोई ग्रुप है तो दैट विल बी कॉल्ड इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर. अगर वो ग्रुप लोकली बेस्ड है तो दैट विल बी कॉल्ड डोमेस्टिक इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर. ओके, सो ये हैं क्या? ये वो इंस्टीट्यूट्स और ग्रुप ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स हैं जो कि फाइनेंशियल एसेट्स एंड सिक्योरिटीज में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं. कौन कौन से हो सकते हैं? ये कि म्यूचुअल फंड कंपनी है, इंश्योरेंस कंपनी है, पेंशन फंड है, बैंक्स है. जैसे कि अब म्यूचुअल फंड कंपनी है, उसमें होता क्या है कि द म्यूचुअल फंड, देर इज one mutual fund company, people, the common people like you and me, they just go give their money, okay, you invest it somewhere. Now if I as an individual or you as an individual will invest, you will invest a very limited amount. But as a mutual fund company, a mutual fund firm, they will pool in the money from the common citizens, and then they'll grow into the size of an institution itself, and then that money will be channelized somewhere. Same is for insurance companies, same is for pension banks, pension funds and banks. पेंशन फंड्स जैसे कि आपका एनपीएस है या ईएसआईसी वगैरह है, सो दे पूल इन द मनी एंड देन दे इन्वेस्ट, राइट। अभी न्यूज में भी आप देखोगे तो न्यूज क्या बोल रही है कि हैवी ड्यूटी बाइंग बाय डीआईआईएस ऑफसेट सर्ज इन एफपीआई आउटफ्लोज। जब एफपीआई आउटफ्लो हो रहा है, मार्केट डाउन हो रही है, तो उसको ऑफसेट मतलब उसको रिप्लेस करने के लिए जो डोमेस्टिक इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, दे आर परचेजिंग इट। So since they are purchasing it, the market is not going as down as it could have had the DIIs not been purchasing the assets. Okay. They are known for stability and long-term investment approach. Okay, fine. Um, okay. Now this is for not for the first time that this thing is happening. In March 2020 also, same thing has happened. Foreign investment, foreign investors were net sellers, but the domestic institutional investors, they pumped in around 55,000 crore rupees, 55,500 crore rupees. Now March 2020 is Corona time. Obviously, if they are investing and not letting the market go down as good it could have, they are helping in stability and growth. Okay. So, yeah. How do they work? They work as to since अब कोई म्यूचुअल फंड ऐसे ही तो nobody can work as a mutual fund investor or as such without having obtained a certification from SEBI. And since they are certified agencies, then we can expect them to adhere to the regulatory standards. They're termed as market movers, just as we discussed. इंडिविजुअल कोई कहीं पे इन्वेस्ट करता है, द कैपेसिटी इज लिमिटेड, बट वंस दे पूल इन द मनी अ हैवी चंक गोज, देन दे कैन इन्फ्लुएंस द मार्केट। मार्केट जनरली इफ यू सी, मार्केट चलती है सिर्फ सेंटिमेंट पे। एवरीबडी मार्केट मोस्टली वर्क्स ऑन सेंटिमेंट। सेंटिमेंट इन द सेंस के most of them would not have analyzed the situation, they would just follow what the other is doing. So in case DIIs, they pitch in, they can change that sentiment itself. Okay, long-term focus. Now again, these another one or two points are important from prelim perspective. Foreign institutional investors या FPIs जो होते हैं, उनको हमने देखा था कि वो शॉर्ट और इंटरमीडिएट टर्म गोल्स में काम करते हैं। बट जो डोमेस्टिक इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, देयर कमिटमेंट इज मोस्टली लॉन्ग टर्म, right? That is how they are contributing to the growth and stability. Okay. Then shares and assets, FII. I mean, उसमें अगर कहीं FII इन्वेस्ट कर रहा है तो 10% is something where it any investment below 10% can be considered as FIIs. However, once it crosses 10%, it will be considered as FDI. So there is obviously a limit, but then this limit does not exist on domestic institutional investors. Again, very important from prelim perspective. Prelims में ये सीधा पूछा जा सकता है. Okay. Tracking institutional activity. this again, right, you can see what um, the retail investor, fifth and sixth point are roughly the same, right? जो रिटेल अब इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट इन्वेस्टर है, तो वी कैन एक्सपेक्ट हिम टू टेक an informed decision. I mean, he is somebody who would have analyzed it is his job. He would have analyzed the market better. So we can expect him to take an informed decision. So for a retail investor, it can serve as a guide that wherever the mutual funds are investing, they should also invest in that line. However, again, not very important. This line which I have highlighted is sufficient कि वो कैसे काम करते हैं. This green and yellow which I have highlighted, that what is the difference between FIIs and DIIs, that is more important. Okay. Then type of DIIs, definition is good enough कि म्यूचुअल फंड्स हैं, पूल करते हैं शेयर होल्डर से अपने पैसे, और पैसे पूल करने के बाद वो कहीं ना कहीं पे इन्वेस्ट कर देते हैं. सिमिलरली इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज हैं, आप इंश्योरेंस खरीदते हो, आप प्रीमियम भरते हो, वेयर डज दैट प्रीमियम गो? दैट प्रीमियम इज इन्वेस्टेड इन द मार्केट. आप वही प्रीमियम अकेले जाके इन्वेस्ट करोगे, इट विल नॉट चेंज एनीथिंग, बट वही प्रीमियम अगर एक इंश्योरेंस कंपनी के पास जाते हो एंड दैट इज इन्वेस्टेड इन बल्क, दैट क्रिएट्स अ डिफरेंस इन द मार्केट. पेंशन फंड्स जैसे गवर्नमेंट, अब तो खैर नॉट ओनली गवर्नमेंट, इवन non-government employees are also eligible for a national pension scheme, but then EPFO and all those pension funds, जो भी पैसा एक एम्प्लॉय का है, वो एम्प्लॉयर जो है वो बोलते हैं ना पैसा कटता है, तो दैट पैसा जो कटता है वो जाता कहाँ है? वो यहीं पे इन्वेस्ट होता है, और यहाँ से फिर रिटर्न्स आते हैं आपके पास. देन बैंकिंग एंड फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस, बैंक खुद भी अपने जो उनके पास बैंकिंग कैपिटल होता है, आपने एफडी कराई, तो एफडी कराई के बैंक अपने पास नहीं रखता. इट ईदर गिव्स एज लोन्स, not only to diversify that, it invests also. So this is all about financial institutional investors and domestic institutional investors. What are domestic institutional investors, how they are different, what all do they function, हैं कौन कौन सी एंटिटी जिनको हम ये DII बोल रहे हैं. So that's all for today. Thank you. I'll again request you to spread this word further and join the Telegram channel. Thank you so much.